Earlier this month, President Barack Obama said he would consider New York Police Commissioner Ray Kelly to replace Homeland Security Secretary Janet Napolitano. Napolitano stepped down from her post earlier this month. Quote, "Ray Kelly's obviously done an extraordinary job in New York," said President Obama. Mr. Kelly might be very happy where he is, but if he's not, I'd want to know about it because obviously he'd be very well qualified for the job. Several New York politicians, including Senator Chuck Schumer, have also supported the idea. And joining our panel now to talk about it, Richard French, I hope I pronounced the last name correctly, the host of Richard French Live. And well,
I'm surprised, by the way, John, that Andrew hasn't already changed the graphics in the back to the Andrew Whitman thing.
I clearly
thought about it.
Clearly, you know how the format works.
Yeah.
So if Ray Kelly goes for Homeland Security, that makes stop and frisk a big issue. Is that enough to derail him if he's nominated for the post?
Stop and frisk is already a big issue, and there are good arguments on both sides of that one. So it's going to come up, and I think that he could probably weather it.
Not enough to derail him. Ray Kelly may be the next Homeland Security Director, whatever the title is. He's qualified for the job. Stop and frisk is a legitimate issue, but as Mariala says, it cuts both ways. There are some people that are very proud of it. Now, it is a liability, and it could be a liability for the first black president, but he could easily weather the storm on this one.
Tom, you got a black president, black attorney general. Every mayoral candidate isn't going to just be asked about the question from now to the primary to the general, but if he's put out there, you know this, Ms. Quinn's going to have a tough question to answer because he'd be the next police commissioner, but now she's against stop and frisk. They're going to keep having to answer this question.
I think she knows that he's not going to be the police commissioner. I heard her interviewed last night.
But don't you think that this becomes issue number one every time when through the appointment confirmation process, he's appointed, they got to say whether they like the guy or not, and then it's a referendum on New York City policing, right?
Right, but remember, for Republicans, they'll probably jump up and clap when they bring up stop and frisk.
It's a big issue in a big city. It's a complicated issue in a complicated city, but no more complicated or big an issue as border security is in the Southwest, or port security is, or airport security. Or immigration. It is I don't think it's.
And there is no one who is more qualified, actually experientially, than Ray Kelly. He went through September 11th. He went through Hurricane Sandy and everything in between.
And worked in the federal government already.
Right, and he's consulted on border security.
This is not a president who's afraid to have conversations about race. If you look at his Trayvon Martin comments,
but he may be afraid to derail immigration reform. And one of the things that Homeland Security does is INS and border security, border patrol. Wouldn't that open Ray Kelly up to legitimate questions about, are you going to stop and frisk Latino Americans? Are you going to stop and frisk every Hispanic in the country?
Ray Kelly's a very smart politician. He's one of the best in the business. He knows when to speak up and he knows when to shut up. And that's an issue.
But he did an editorial. And by the way, I'm with you. If nobody's asking me if I had a vote, I think not only that, but his counterterrorism credentials. Right. The New York City, the NYPD's got a better counterterrorism department than most countries, right? That's right. That all said, that editorial about how many lives they saved, and then when the mayor went and doubled down like he always does, saying we actually underprofile blacks here for what we should be doing, it made it tougher. I think that's going to come up in a confirmation process.
I think New Yorkers, even those who have been stopped by the police, they feel inappropriately or wrongly, would be shocked at how severe the treatment is of people, of immigrants along the border. I think that stop and frisk has got nothing on what goes on in the Southwest, and when it comes to issues like port security, what goes on in New York City is tame compared to what goes on in other parts of the country.
American citizens versus people who are most largely illegal aliens, right?
Possibly, but it is not enough to. It is not enough of a policy or an issue to derail his nomination in the broader context of that. I think ultimately that's the issue. He's not a kid. But it could be a nice capstone to what has been a very
one of the conversations about
significant career.
The department is that it was cobbled together after September 11th of all the departments, and it was really kind of a mess internally. Could Ray Kelly do that? I'll tell you, he has cleaned up and streamlined the NYPD in a way that nobody could have done before. People who we know very well, who know him well and work under him, say with great affection, the dude is a dictator. Everything runs like clockwork now because he is so strong and has his hands in everything. He's
How
a
about
great
you,
leader.
Andrew? Would you have a problem?
I would, actually. I would, because I think stop and frisk is an unsettled question. and there would be lots of questions about that. And B, the application as it applies to immigration and undocumented immigrants. Would he bring some of what he's brought to New York to that fight as well? And would that, step on the feet of Latino groups, Hispanic groups, as well as African American groups?
But remember, Ray Kelly is the same official where his popularity is sky high in the black community. Same guy, I think his numbers were at 65%.
Didn't he do a really good job, Dom, especially compared to his predecessors, when there were questionable police shootings and there were tragedies?
Yes.
He went right to the areas. He went into the
Great
churches.
point,
right?
Richard. Not only did he go into the churches, there was one incident where he outraged the PBA because he came forward and said this shooting was wrong. I forgot which one off the top of my head, but the police commissioner of New York City actually denounced one of his own shootings.
Paul Brown going over to, I think it's Notre Dame, is for a newly created position of External Affairs and Communications Director, may be the departure required by those who care deeply about stop and frisk in New York City to clear the way for Ray to proceed back to the national stage, because he's had a tenure in Washington before.
And this will be a nice bow on his career. Remember, for the most part, he's got 4 months left as police commissioner. That's it. New mayor comes in, he's done.
I know you're up on the break, Andrew, but one of the things, think about, nobody seems to really care, except maybe for us at the table, but the privacies you give up in New York every day compared to September 11th. And it happened a lot with the NYPD basically getting a blank check where they wanted to put cameras, where they wanted to listen, who they were going to. That may come up with the newfound interest in Washington over the surveillance programs. Now, I know that's not Homeland Security. I know the NYPD doesn't make policy, but it is to a degree. And whether whoever's got to weigh in on that, I think that would be part of the Q&A that he'd have to. And he's been pretty clear. He says, I'll use every tool at my disposal to counter terrorism, and I'll take on any debate if they want it. I think he might have
Maybe Ray Kelly's appointment as Homeland Security Secretary is part of the grand bargain on immigration reform. Maybe it's one of the gimmies.
If he's nominated, it'll be interesting to see where the different players fall on both sides of the aisle. This may be one of those strange bedfellows kinds of votes that they get in the
I thought you were
Senate.
going to bring up Anthony Weiner again.
You know, we almost made it through the entire segment. Almost. All right, we're going to take a quick break. Up next, the Kennedy Library has released new images of JFK taken just a few months before his murder. The question is, why are the Kennedys still such an object of fascination in this country? That and other political talkers after this break. Stay with us.